Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher alongside Dick Briggs, bringing you some wrestling discussion from the last week of college and high school competition. We're getting a little closer. Are you ready for Christmas?
No.
Getting closer at all?
Getting there, yeah.
We haven't even started, other than putting decorations up. We're still a long ways away. So, anybody's got any good present ideas? Let me know. Or if you want to buy us presents, Dick and I are always willing to accept. Right?
Oh, little stuff for me, golf tees, things like that. It doesn't take big stuff to make me happy.
Right. Same here. Same here. Well, speaking of gifts, we got a little bit of a gift on Sunday with a pretty entertaining duel at Carver Hawkeye Arena, the resumption of the Cy-Hawk Series duel. And if you haven't seen, boy, this was everything we kind of thought it would be. Alternating back and forth, exciting, fun, some gamesmanship, everything you could think of. We got it Sunday at Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Right, we both kind of called it. I called 5-5 match wise. That was definitely a possibility. It ended up being that way, and then you called bonus points being a factor, and both nailed it.
Yep, and of course the big question coming in was who was going to take the mat, for both teams, and we got the answer right away. Spencer Lee making his debut, Real Woods taking the mat for both of them for Iowa. Iowa State, we didn't see Kyson Tarakina at 25. We saw Corey Kabamban instead, and then Sam Schuler wrestled at heavyweight against Cassiope in the finale that Cassiope won for 18-15 Iowa victory. But you got your answer right out of the gate, Spencer Lee. Surprised, not surprised that you saw him on Sunday?
I might add also that I'm not sure we saw the number one man at 33 for Iowa State. Right. They don't drop off a whole lot there either. So with Redding out, but I don't think there's a very much of a gap there. So that didn't really show much. As far as Lee being in the lineup, I don't know where his progress was, so I had no idea. After seeing him on the mat, I'm glad they got him out on the mat. I'm sure he's glad he was out there. It wasn't one of his best performances. He was Lee-like in the first period, and then after that, he was un-Lee-like. Looked tired, I think, to put it frankly. And I don't know if that was I haven't been out on a mat in competition for 2 years. I haven't been going maybe as hard because I wasn't released in the room. I don't know if weight had an issue or maybe all of those things. But, it was obvious that was not him in his top form. So it's going to be fun to see him get back up there.
He mentioned he talked about being able to build, but I know a lot of people point to this is his first competition since going down to Florida at the end of December last year, but people forget that though I think it was only 2 matches down there last year, that was the first time he had wrestled since March of 2021. So really, he'd only had like 2 matches in over 18 months here, and that's I think that would I guess I could see that kind of being a thing where he's not but he still scored a takedown in the final period and won 16-5. So obviously it was something that Iowa needed. You talk about bonus points, one of 3 major decisions for Iowa. The thing that I thought was interesting is, even going to the bathroom 10 minutes before the meet, people were like, "Are we going to see Lee?" Somebody in the bathroom said, "Hey, are we going to see Lee? Do you think Lee and Real are wrestling?" And I'm like, I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, in 10 minutes. But, everybody was just dying to see those two on the mat for Iowa. I think they thought they needed both of them on the mat. Turns out that they did. But as things were kind of leading up, there were little clues, since everybody was so, interested in it. You start kind of paying attention to some other things, like when they came out for introductions and they showed Lee on the Jumbotron, he had his mouthpiece in. If he's not wrestling, you probably don't see him with a mouthpiece in. He's just there. And then when they're getting ready to start the duel, you saw, some of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club and the teammates kind of huddled around the tunnel, and you kind of see Pat Lugo looking down the tunnel and smiling, and that was almost like, okay, there's something up. So Lee's coming out. They're anticipating it, and sure enough, it drew the reaction from the crowd that everybody expected. A pretty loud pop. So that really kind of kick-started things off. But this duel all the way through, just kind of a back and forth thing. A lot of close matches. Outside of those, well, I guess Carr. Obviously, the major decisions weren't really close. Carr over Kennedy, yeah, it was a decision, but that was pretty much all Carr. Cassiope at the end, that was a decision, but that was pretty much all Cassiope. But the rest that you look at it, Ramazan wrestling at 33. I've heard that Redding kind of is having some weight issues. That's what's kind of preventing him from being in at 33. That's coming from Cyclone, somebody that knows the Cyclone program pretty well. But Ramazan, nice job getting a takedown late. And then Pinero Johnson, I tell you what, really impressed with him. Got a takedown in overtime. He is a heck of a tough freshman.
Yeah, undefeated, and has already in his 7 or 8 matches this season knocked off. Is it 3 now? Highly ranked wrestlers, top 10. Anyway, it's just he was
2 in the top 6 for sure.
Yeah, and anyway, yeah, and that was my guy that I was really anxious to see wrestle, and he didn't disappoint. And just because he had a high caliber opponent in Murin, and so we knew that was going to be a great match, and it didn't disappoint. And so it was back and forth every match up until 84-97 when Iowa State won. They were the first to win back-to-back matches,
right?
So going back to 125, Kabam did a nice job. He stood in there and battled with Lee, and he kind of put a little question mark into everyone sitting in the arena and watching at home, going, "Oh, well, this isn't the Lee we're used to seeing necessarily." Yeah. So good for him for doing that and not laying down and taking it or anything. So and Iowa State came ready to battle. It was fun. That's what made it a fun meet.
Yep. And speaking of battles, you got to look at 141, which almost turned into an actual battle after the match. Real Woods using a penalty point for stalling, riding time point, and a couple of escapes to beat another freshman, Casey Swiderski, 4-2.
Right, and if I remember right, Swiderski's a 4-time state champ out of Michigan. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And so didn't know a whole lot about him. I hadn't seen him, so that was an interesting debut of him to me, and I think to the rest of the people in the stands, or many of them anyway. And he wasn't going to take, second seat to this fifth year senior, who was also wrestling his debut in Carver. So that was an interesting match. I'm not really tickled about what happened at the end, but from a entertainment standpoint, it's pretty cool. But from the the keep it classy point of view, I don't like that stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. 157. I've said this multiple times. I said it on the radio yesterday as well. Sometimes it's hard not. You've got to balance being professional. You've got to, act accordingly. But also, you got to remember, I've been around wrestling since I was 6 years old, in a lot of different fashions. Following my brother around, wrestling myself, being a fan, being somebody that covers. I've seen a lot of this stuff. I still get excited. I'm telling you, that was the first time when Kobe Sebrecht threw Jason Kreiser. That was one of the more excitable single moves I think I've seen. They're locked up right in the center of the mat, and Sebrecht went for it. Guys were parallel to the mat at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out to be a big 6-point move for Sebrecht, but that throw was probably one of the more exciting moments that actually got a reaction out of me, where I just audibly went, "Wow!"
Yeah.
on press row, which I usually don't do.
Well, and when you're locked up like that and they're standing straight up, so there's something's going to happen. Something's got to give. Could have went the other way as well. Obviously gained position on that, and then he threw it. And I was watching on television. Jim Gibbons described it as kicking a 50-yard field goal. I describe it as doing a helicopter. Is that what they call them? A soccer kick?
A bicycle kick?
Bicycle kick in soccer. Yeah, he was going for it. And so it was that bicycle kick in soccer. And man, that was fun. Now, as a high school coach and a high school referee right now, it was in college. It was absolutely a good no call for a slam or anything like that. It wasn't but in high school, I'm calling that a slam all day long, because it's kind of the same rule written, or I think it is anyway. I'm not exactly sure of the college rule, but in high school, it's just called differently. It's just, man, I never see it called in college a slam. Mm-hmm. In high school, that would not fly. So my reason for bringing that up is you see trends. You see, like when Lincoln McElroy came out and did the boot scoot. So now everyone's doing the boot scoot. So in John Smith with the low singles, and Stephen Neal with the blast double, and just all those trends. And now I don't want high school kids to go out and start doing that bicycle kick, because I can be called against them.
And obviously that gave Sebrecht a 6-0 lead. That was one of those weights where I think we're that was leaning towards Sebrecht, but also could be considered a toss-up. The one thing that I thought was interesting is getting overlooked maybe a little bit with that throw is the way that he secured a takedown and a right out late in the third to secure the major decision. Now, Iowa ended up with 2 others, majors from Lee and Brands, but little things like that can make a difference in a close duel. And I just thought it was pretty impressive by Sebrecht to close things out the way he did for a major.
Right. And even big picture, small picture, that meet, big picture, the rest of the season. Sebrecht's he's a snowball at the top of the mountain rolling downhill. He's just gaining, he's getting bigger and bigger and gaining more confidence. And you can see it in that match. And, when you get that 6-point lead like that, that's nice. I mean, now you can feel more comfortable and relax and go after it, and even maybe be a little more aggressive or less or whatever. And so he's a snowball rolling downhill. It's fun to watch that build.
Yeah, and I know he's got the pin over. He was coming off the pin against Penn, top 10 opponent there, but not necessarily the toughest schedule at 157 for him compared to what he's going to see when the Big Ten rolls around. But you start gaining confidence and momentum now. That's only going to help him in January once things kind of get tougher.
Exactly. And we saw that last year a little bit with some of the guys in the Iowa lineup. They early on they just had hammers, it seemed like. But I think Young last year just had a whole bunch of back to back to back, and then some of the guys didn't have it. It's just the way it works, at different weights. So that point taken, yeah.
We talked about Carr. Carr came away with a 10-4 win over Patrick Kennedy, who's a quality opponent, obviously. Kevin Dresser, I think tongue in cheek in the press conference said, we told David we got to get bonus points out of there. Even though I'm sure there is probably a little bit of truth to they were expecting bonus points. You can see that. But I mean, Carr is just so fluid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time you see David Carr take the mat, it's hard not to just continually be impressed with him.
Right. He's got that shot that goes, it's a straight on shot, but he turns the corner so fast, it becomes almost like a sweep single. So his opponent, when he's looking to defend straight on, Carr's already around the corner and has the far ankle or is picking it up or what. He's so quick and so smooth, like you're saying. So yeah, absolutely. It still remains to be seen, that he's up a weight, and that's a tough weight class. So, I mean, they're all tough, but I hope he can maintain that weight and win it, so we'll see there.
Yeah, when you're talking about turning the corner, that was one of the things where, I'm not sure if it was his third takedown or fourth, but he had a setup to where it was tap, tap, shoot. And like you said, wasn't necessarily a sweep single, but, he shot and was around the corner so fast, there wasn't much to do. And, it was tap, tap, shoot, turn, finish, takedown. And it took me longer to actually tap or type those things than it took him to actually execute it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if you wanted a tape for a young wrestler or a young person to see, that's, with the continuous wrestling, because you see a lot of wrestlers, particularly beginning and even intermediate high school wrestlers, when they shoot, they stop straight on and they're anticipating that sprawl and that defense. And that's why, turning that corner is, there's the guy you want to watch and learn some technique from.
Yep. Nelson Brands looked much stronger. At 174, 184, Marcus Coleman, he's really picked up where he left off last year. I think, last year was his real breakout year and, just kind of hit another level, especially late. I think you're just seeing that carrying over now, and he had a nice win against Assad, scoring a takedown late to win that one.
Right, and you're exactly right. I see that as well. And maybe he's got to be a senior by now, doesn't he? He's been around forever, it seems like. And so maybe he's got that old senioritis where he's, this is my last chance. I don't have anything to lose. I'm the guy that's been here, so get out of my way, sort of an attitude, and so agreed. Assad didn't wrestle bad or anything. Marcus just did a nice job.
And 197, the rematch that I think a lot of people were kind of pointing to in this one, Younger Bastida, 2 first period takedowns, and then held on for a 4-3 win over Jacob Warner. The one thing, that no secret, Bastida's athletic, really good on his feet. He's got really good offense. The thing that impressed me the most once Warner started shooting and got in, I think about 2 or 3 times, Bastida's defense and his ability to fend off those shots where you thought Warner's going to finish here, or this is going to be hard to prevent giving up points, and he did. I thought that was on the defense from Bastida. Maybe it was Warner's inability to finish. What did you think?
It could be a little bit of both. Yeah, the thing that in that match that I noticed that could have been a turning point was Bastida's very active on his feet, particularly early on in the match, and then in the third period, when there was a headgear pull and they threw the brick out, I almost thought it would have been better to set the brick down and let things go, because I thought Bastida was on the ropes in a little bit, and it was a 2-point difference at that time, and I think they were neutral. Yeah, they were neutral, and then so yeah, they got the point with the brick toss, but more importantly, I think Bastida had about a minute and a half to recover and was able to finish that match. So that's one of those where you go, man, I don't know if it was worth that point to throw the brick out. And that same sort of thing happened at the 41 pound when there was a blood timeout. I thought it helped Woods, the blood timeout. So those kind of timeouts, and that one you can't stop. Blood's, you can't fake bleeding, right? And on this one, so you don't know looking back. You kind of make that judgment whether it would be better to sit on that brick, but that was one thing I noticed in that match.
But then Cassiope finished things out. In control the whole match, except for maybe a small stretch where he gave up a takedown, almost gave up a cradle. Could have been a lot more than just 2 points, but was able to break the grip, and then ended up adding a takedown of his own.
Right, that's late in that period.
But
yeah,
but that was just the fact that they have somebody like that to close out. He really comes through for him.
Right, and there hasn't always been. I mean, there has been lately, but there's been years when Iowa hasn't been one of their stronger weights, and so you're right. It's nice to see that they've got that anchor, and I guess bookends, whatever. Very, very strong at 25, very strong at 285, and pretty darn good in between. So not bad. You see a lot of the love-hate in this duel, a lot of jawing back and forth and kisses and thumbs up and thumbs down and pointing and everything else. It makes it fun for the crowd and all that, and it's going to be fun in the future.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I know you kind of mentioned after 41, I didn't necessarily like some of that. And I'm not big on the gestures and stuff afterwards. For some reason, maybe it was because I was on, I was battling a cold. Maybe I was on meds and a little flighty Sunday afternoon. I thought some of it was fun and really kind of added to, there was a moment, like Nelson Brands kind of pointing to the Iowa State bench and went like this, and then turned to the Iowa bench and went like that. I mean, that, I thought that was kind of harmless. There was during the Warner Bastida match when the brick was thrown out, I think Dresser approached the table, and Terry Brands, I think, took exception and then pointed at Dresser and pointed, Dresser looked at him and then pointed back, and Derek St. John was laughing about it, and from the corner, and I don't know. It just seemed like it just kind of added to it. It was almost more of a show, even though it wasn't, it wasn't like last year with the little dust up afterwards that I thought was unnecessary. But I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth with that, but I just thought it was an entertaining duel. And, some of the shenanigans that revolved around, I kind of laughed about it, even though, normally not a big, huge fan of that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't see the coaches pointing back and forth in that match. I'm not sure why.
It was just real brief, brief.
I'm not sure what Dresser would have come to the table when they threw out the brick. Maybe it's just inquiring what they're throwing it or something.
And I think that's why, I think that's probably what Terry was saying, was like, you shouldn't be there, get back to your corner. And then, but that was that was a fun duel. And Iowa, was it 18 straight duels now, 17-0 under Tom Brands as a head coach. I think Andy Hamilton had an interesting a stat. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the Brands brothers as athletes, assistants, Tom as a head coach, they've only lost one time. That was when Tom was an assistant, back in like 03 or something like that. That's the only time they've lost to Iowa State in a duel, which is pretty remarkable, given some of those Iowa State teams that they've come across. So,
yeah, and they pretty much have owned Iowa State, but Iowa State's coming.
And I tell you what, next year might be a different story, to be honest with you. For both teams, Iowa heads to UT Chattanooga on Saturday. Interestingly there, Spencer Lee not in the probable lineups released earlier today. Aiden Harris and Charles Matthews are. Colin Shriver and Jesse Ibarra at 133. Real Woods is listed with Drew Bennett at 41. And then you've got what's really stabilized, I think, in the back half of the lineup, where you've got Murin at 49, Siebrecht, Kennedy, Nelson Brands, Assad, Warner, Cassiope in the probable lineup there. So I think Iowa's getting closer to having their best lineup on the mat. And I think we'll see a little more of that against UTC Chattanooga, who's 2-5 right now. And then Iowa State is actually off until December 19th, when they go to the collegiate duels in New Orleans, and they'll face Oregon State and Cornell there on the 19th, and the first day of that 2-day tournament. So a little training phase and some time away from competition for the Cyclones.
Yeah, I mean, and I know they're not happy with not winning, but they've got some nice things to hang your hat on and to work, to go forward with, and it's not like they came in and got blown out like maybe in the past has happened, and right. So they're sitting in a good spot right now.
Definitely. You and I was in a good spot this weekend at the Cliff Keen Invitational in Las Vegas. They finished 5th, and a pretty good field out there. They had 2 finalists, and Cale Happel at 141 and Parker Keckheisen at 184. But Kyle Biscaglia had a nice run. Real Buto and placed as well, I believe. But what do you think about the way the Panthers wrestled out in Vegas? I thought it was a good showing.
Right. They they finished ahead of Arizona State, Cornell, Ohio State, Oregon State, to name a few, and they wrestled really well. And in particular, you said Biscaglia, he lost in the second round, and then came back and won 5 straight to finish third. So he did a nice job. And in the first 3 matches on the consolation side, he didn't allow a point. So good show by him. And then Tyrell Gordon also, throw him in there, and he beat AJ Nevels from Nebraska, I believe in his last match.
That's right.
5th. So and the guy that I was most anxious to see wrestle this year, Cale Happel. I'm anxious to see a couple of Panthers, but I just, for some reason, I thought he's going to burst out this year. And it's easy to say now, but I honestly thought that earlier after watching last year and just knowing the Happel family and getting a chance to be a regular out on that mat and disappointing, finished second and he lost to a tough kid from Nebraska. And Nebraska did a nice job. They won it. They had a pretty good, decent tournament as well. So they're tough team, but Panthers did well. I thought they had a great tournament.
Yeah, Happel came in as the 11th seed. I want to say knocked off the 3 seed from Virginia Tech. The 2 seed Carlson, I believe, from South Dakota State. That's actually his second win over Carlson. Beat him in the Daktronics Open. As well. I mean, it's just seems like things are coming together. He had flashes of that last year, and just ended up being an alternate. A lot of times you might have those moments where, things just kind of sink in, or maybe just kind of missing out on something. Kind of helps flip the switch, and I tell you what, it's something's clicking for Cale Happel right now, and it'll be real fun to see how that kind of carries forward. I know UNI's got the UNI Open this weekend. We'll see who all competes in that, and then they're also down in New Orleans for the collegiate duels there as well.
Right, they get are the collegiate duels prior to Christmas or after Christmas? They're prior to Christmas, aren't they?
Prior to Christmas. It'll be December 19th and 20th.
Okay.
Down there. Remember, they have kind of like the 2 pools, and then I think then you kind of cross over there on the next day.
I don't think they do cross over. I think they
just stay on the same side.
I think so. So in other words, Iowa's not going to wrestle. I think is Iowa State there as well, or
Iowa State and UNI are there. Iowa's not there.
Right, and they won't wrestle each other because they're on opposite sides, if I remember right. So they save that duel for back home and that sort of thing. But a couple other notes on the Cliff King Vegas Invitational. Tanner Sloan did a real nice job. He finished 3rd. I know that he's not excited. He was seeded at number 1 and got beat early in an earlier round, but then came back and on his consolation side beat the number 8, number 6, and number 4 ranked kids in the nation. So he did a nice job there. And then the other one that was a big upset was Labriola beating number 1 Mackay Lewis. So big upset there. That's pretty neat. Anyway, a couple of notes on that tournament.
Yeah, speaking of Labriola, or who you mentioned had been around for a long time. Labriola seems like he's been there since Tim Brewster was coach.
Yeah. With COVID, we've got a lot of that, don't we? Yep.
One other thing I want to mention, this is something that I saw on social media that this is something I think is really cool. You always talk about the Dan Gable tree, right? And the coaches that ended up, branching off and leading programs of their own. You really can measure the impact of a coach by maybe the coaches that kind of emanate from their programs. Allison Schwab posted 4 pictures from the Cliff Keen tournament out in Vegas, and it's dug with former Panther wrestlers that were actually in the tournament as assistant coaches. One was Joe Colon at Northwestern. He's an assistant there. Of course, he's been an assistant at Fresno State when they were running the program um, and everything. Cody Caldwell, who's been a fantastic coach and kind of a right hand man for Damian Hahn there, and Chris Bono before that at South Dakota State. Ethan Lofthouse, who Doug coached when they're in Iowa City together, and Ethan's at Utah Valley, and then Blaze Cabell, who's an assistant at Navy now. And seeing those guys posing together for pictures, and you're starting to see a little bit of a tree emanating from just kind of sprouting up from Doug Schwab roots, a little bit, which is cool.
Yeah, I did not see that picture, but that's neat to hear, and it's great to have those athletes still in the sport.
Yeah, and let's face it, I think there was one time where Joe Colon might have been suspended or something while he was a wrestler at UNI, or didn't finish a season. I think there was some stuff with Blaze too, some growing pains there, and now to see them go on and become assistant coaches, and now they're helping other wrestlers grow and get the best out of them. That's really neat to see the impact that Schwab has made with them, and now it's carrying over to how they're affecting and developing other people, which is pretty sweet.
Very cool.
Any other tidbits from the weekend that we haven't touched on that
I would mention this at the Division III level. Co went up to lacrosse, where there was a triangular between lacrosse, who's ranked number 3, and North Central, who's ranked number 4, and Co, who's ranked number 8. And so there was a really nice triangular there with high ranked teams, and there was plenty of ranked wrestlers and wrestlers upsetting other wrestlers, and so it was a good weekend. Co struggled a bit with both those teams in terms of the meet score and lost both, but Tristan Westfall at 184 went 2-0 on the weekend, and so that was a tough one for Co, tough weekend, but good competition, and that they're going to find out where they're at and get back to work, I guess. So there was a number 1 versus a couple of former champs. Robbie Preeson, NCAA champ from North Central, wrestled against Alec Friddle, the NWCA champ 2 years ago, down a weight, and it was a 4-1 match that Preeson won. But Friddle's right in that, so kind of a good measuring stone. Esmoil lost to a tough Cervantes, so I think that's his first loss of the year in a close one, 9-7. But then also Loris wrestled Augsburg. Augsburg, of course, is all perennially tough and ranked number 2 right now. Shane Legal, their national champ 2 years ago, remains undefeated, and he's beaten he's started out ranked 3rd. Remember, I said there were 3 national champs at 184. Right. He beat the number defending champ, so now he's ranked number 1 and bumped the other 2 down. So that weight's maybe a revolving thing this season. Cornell wrestled in the Invitational, had a couple of medalists there. Gabe Smith at 57 was at 2nd, and Evan Husko was 4th. And they'll wrestle Loris next this week, I think. Thursday, I think, this week. So anyway, it's kind of the update on Division III. Upper Iowa didn't wrestle. They got quite a bit of a time off. I think they last wrestled before Thanksgiving and then wrestled like the 19th or something of December. So they've got a little bit of a break there.
Let's shift gears to high school. Obviously, big first weekend of tournaments. Tournament competition for the boys. Girls are still in action as well. should we start with the Dan Gable Donnybrook down there? I know there's some good individual performances. Got titles from a couple City High folks down there. City High had a good showing. Lidmar did well. The young freshman that we were introduced to on Thursday, and for Iowa City West, Alex Pierce came away with a title at 106. But were you able to muddle your way through the CompU whatever results?
I got some help, but I didn't have time to do it. I was doing it this morning, and I didn't have time to figure it out. It's not easy. There's a new system they're using, and I'm not familiar with it. I must be inept or something, but it's not very.
You're not the only one. I heard from quite a few that were real.
Well,
we're real excited having to try to navigate through the results.
Right. As far as the results are concerned, I did see the placements, where everyone was at, and notice that we had Iowa, state of Iowa had 6 champions, and that's it out of the 14 weights. So the other 8 were out of state athletes. So this is a high powered tournament that's brought in some great talent, and it's a 2-day tournament. It's 2 days for the boys, and then the girls, I guess, is 2 days too. They go Thursday, Friday, I think, and then the boys Friday, Saturday. And then I was actually down there roughing on Sunday with the youth, and we got finished in time to watch the Iowa State meet. So that was nice. And anyway, so the champs, you mentioned the champs. The other couple of champs were Colfax Christensen at 120 from Waukee, and then Ryder Block at 138 for Waverly Shellrock. And I think Block's going to Iowa next year, wouldn't he? See, committed?
Yes.
Yes. There's an Iowa. Future Iowa wrestler. So those are the 6 to go with the 4 that you mentioned.
And Colfax Christensen received the Outstanding Wrestler Award for his title at 120 pounds, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's impressive because, if you're the outstanding wrestler at a tournament like that, holy moly, that's hard to pick, especially when I guess you got a world champ in there in that list. So that you're,
the top 5 teams on the girls' side down there, Lebanon High School from Missouri. And then you had a strong contingent of Iowa teams with Waverly, Waverly area wrestling club, and then Bettendorf and Decorah and Ankeny finishing out the top 5 there as well. Of course, Decorah getting a title from Naomi Simon, who faced Iowa City West Chanel Vila in the finals. Vila announced here she's going to continue her wrestling career at Baker University, NAIA program. There, it's either in Missouri or in Kansas. And that's one that another boys program has wrestled at Carver Hawkeye Arena against Iowa a few times. So, that was a good decision for her. On the boys' side, the top teams, I think it's Marmion Academy, then Liberty High, Mount Carmel, Linmar coming in 4th as the top Iowa finisher there. So good job by the Lions, who had a finalist in Grant Kress, I believe, at 152.
Yeah.
I know Tate not Gaborn was 3rd at 182. Had that battle between him and Arnold in the semifinals. Arnold went on to win it, and Knockborn got 3rd. So, yeah, and pretty good showings and a pretty good field.
Right, and then I'm sorry, I thought you mentioned Kress as a champ. He did a good job there.
I might have. I can't remember. I can't remember.
And then on the girls' side, they had 7 of the 14 were Iowa champs, and some that we'll know, but most of it, we talked about this, that really the strength in Iowa girls wrestling right now is north central Iowa. You know, like Charles City had 2 champs in Lily Luft and Destiny Kolheim, and then then also Decoria mentioned Waverly Shell Rock. And tell me, where's Raccoon River? Raccoon River. That was a club that Kate Biscaglia was a champ at 100, and she was in that.
I think the Raccoon River goes through Des Moines, doesn't it? So it's somewhere in central Iowa.
Yeah. And then closer to home, Bree Swenson from Benton Shellsburg was a champ at 110. So that was nice. Some other area wrestlers, Mount Vernon was second and at 190. And then Reese Roberts from Linn-Mar was second. Ali Jelinek from Linn-Mar, McKenna Rogers from Solon, and Madison Kirby from Williamsburg were all third. So we had some area girls that did real
well. Some other action too. The Indy, the Cliff Keen Indy Invitational in Independence. That was always a big one on this first weekend, a 2-day event. Osage came away with a team title there, but Alburnett they were second, I believe. 3 finalists for the Pirates. They got a champ in Carson Klosterman at 160 pounds, but I've been really impressed with Alburnett so far this season.
Right, and Alburnett is doing it without a 72. Let's see, I think, or 70. They have an 82. I don't think they have a 95, 220 or heavyweight. So 4 of the top 5 weights, they don't even have an athlete. So they're doing it. I mean, they're pretty darn strong considering they're doing it with just 10 athletes. So yeah, they had a great showing, 3 in the finals. And then they also had a 3rd and 2 fours. So they had 6 in the top 4. And remember, there's 31 teams at this tournament. So to place even 4th is doing a great job.
Yeah. Especially for a 1A team. And they're really kind of climbing back up. Mentioned Carson Klosterman winning at 160. Brody Neighbor was a runner-up at 138. And then Preston Klosterman, runner-up at 126. One of the highlights of or I guess marquee matchups in the finals. You look at 120 where you had 2-time state champ Brandon Paez of Lisbon versus Prairie's Blake Jaimo, 2-time state runner-up for Prairie. And Paez going to UNI, Jaimo going to Iowa State, and Paez came away with a 7-0 victory. A nice quality win there for Paez early in the season.
Right, if I remember right, it's a fairly significant score, close to a major maybe, but
7-0. Yep.
7-0. Yeah, there you go. That's right. Yeah, and that's surprised me more than Paez winning, but winning 7-0 and blanking him and almost majoring him. So
yeah, 3 takedowns. Might have been 1 in each period. So. Yep. It wasn't the only big win for Lisbon too. Heavyweight Wyatt Smith ranked 2nd in 1A, faced Osage's Mac Miller, who's number 4 in 2A. Wyatt Smith comes away with I believe a 6-3 victory there. Really kind of broke it open in the second half of the match. And then the reason why I just kind of mentioned that one too is it came on the heels of Smith beating Corver Hupke of Independence, who's also ranked 5th in 2A. So Wyatt Smith with those 2 back-to-back wins to win the heavyweight title, which is a nice accomplishment. for him.
Yeah, darn right. Those are two very nice wins.
Yep. I believe West Burlington Notre Dame had a couple champs. Greene County, I think had one or two, especially McKinley Robbins there, 138, who beat Brody Neighbor in the finals. But then also Jace Hedeman of Union came away with a championship at 113. He scored takedowns in the first and third period for a 7-3 victory over Max Siegel. And Siegel from, I believe, one of the Missouri schools there, competing at Independence.
Right, and as for Independence, they had 2/3, and then the rest were like they had a couple of sevenths and an eighth, and then there were some that were in the low teens or mid teens, and then low 20s. So, but they had a real good balanced team. So they didn't have any champs, but I think they're going to be a nice dual meet team this year, based on what I'm seeing here.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's something that's been kind of indicative of their program, and definitely a characteristic from last year's team. It's one of those programs where the sum of the parts is greater than the individual, right?
Yeah.
And it's been a program that's really shown or displayed that team aspect of the sport that sometimes gets lost, and might see that out of them again this year, which could be interesting because in the WAMAC you've got West Delaware, of course, which good in tournament and in dual situations. You've got Williamsburg, who's a really, really good dual team. You guys see them this weekend. Mount Vernon, listening to people talk about Mount Vernon, and that's one I think that's climbed up into the dual rankings in 2A. And then you've got Independence as well. Some other teams, like a Benton Schellsburg or a South Tama might not, or Solon might not be there on a dual scale. They'll have good individuals, but you still have this nucleus of, about 5 teams in the WAMAC that are going to be pretty good dual wise.
Right, and then you're right. Teams like Benton and Schellsburg, I'll even throw in Benton Community, who they have a great youth program right now. They're middle school. They have well over 30 wrestlers in it, and that's kind of they've had a turnover in coaches the last 5 years or so or whatever, so to see that program coming back and get rejuvenated is really nice. I think they're in a good spot right now. So you might see they're kind of my sleeper team in that conference. And Mount Vernon, wow, I mean they wrestled Williamsburg in a duel last week, and Williamsburg only won 3 matches. So Mount Vernon's solid this year.
Mm-hmm. We'll get a chance to see them on Thursday, Clear Creek Amana. At Mount Vernon, we'll get boys and girls competition at the same time. So really looking forward to that duel on Thursday.
Yes, that'll be a fun. Haven't been to a Mount Vernon duel in Mount Vernon for a long time, so a couple years in a few years.
It'll be fun. And then a couple other things. Indianola edged West Delaware for team title at the Bob Murphy Invitational on Saturday in Manchester. Don Bosco came away with a team title at the Keith Young Invitational in Cedar Falls. I believe Cedar Rapids Kennedy had a champ in Colin Falk, I believe, at 160, 170. Anything else kind of stand out to you from this weekend?
Well, the standout at the Bob Murphy is this is the first time that since they've named it the Bob Murphy that West Delaware hasn't won it. And so Indiana won it 240 to 218 in points. And then Benton Community, like I was just talking about, finished third with 200 and had a champ in Brennan Haying and 2 seconds and 3/3, I think, or something like that. So again, another nice showing with Benton Community. But then Don Bosco just seems to, they win that Cedar Falls Invitational a lot. Valley was second, but they won at 216. And then after that, second, third, and fourth were real close between Valley, North Scotland, and Norwalk. And then kind of dropped off after that. But one other note, I was at Williamsburg. Williamsburg, you mentioned that, did win their dual tournament and beat Pella in the finals. Pella beat Davenport Assumption. It's usually the finals are kind of Assumption in Williamsburg, and so then Marshalltown beat Assumption for third and fourth. So I don't remember the last time Assumption lost two duels in the same tournament or day or whatever. So
right. And speaking of Williamsburg, I'm trying to see if I can.
As you're looking, one other comment is Monticello won their invitational, and Marion was there and took second.
I know Vinton Schellsburg had a champion in at least one champion in Cooper Sanders.
Right, they were
one of our area wrestlers to watch. He was a state runner-up from a year ago. So somebody to keep an eye on there. But speaking of Williamsburg, they hosted a girls tournament Monday night that had quite a few teams, including Anamosa, Prairie was down there, Vinton Schellsburg girls, Linmar as well. Kate Seary with the title. Solon had a couple champions as well. McKenna Rogers, part of that group. Anamosa, Anna Musser had a win. I know Emma Peach was there as well from Iowa Valley. She came away with a title at Williamsburg. Just kind of looking through Mackenzie Childers, who's kind of one of those leaders in the Prairie Room. She got a victory in Independence. Independence has had a pretty good run on the girls' side too. I believe Rachel Eddy, Jordan Durr has been kind of a standout for them. Williamsburg had a champion in Ryan Holt at 130 pounds. So you see a lot of parity there. I think a big win at 135, Dakota Whitman of Independence over Chloe Sanders of Vinton Schellsburg by fall. Chloe Sanders really strong competitor there for the Vikings. So you see a lot of parity. A lot of individuals from different schools on the girls' side coming through and winning titles, and you kind of like seeing that.
Right. You mentioned Kinsey at Prairie as a leader. She was, I think, the only one on the girls, the only girl to wrestle last year, and she's been at least a one-time medalist at that state tournament that they called, that the coaches ran. Obviously, this is the first year they're going to be a sanctioned state tournament, and officially this will be the first one. But we know there's been some others, and she's represented well there and done a nice job.
Yep. A couple other Olivia Benema of Solon. We got to watch her last year. She came away with a title at 140, and then Maria Brown. For Center Point Urbana, she was one of our wrestlers to watch. She also had a title at 145. So mentioned Emma Peach, who's one of the top, probably one of the states, probably in the discussion is one of the better pound for pound wrestlers and a champ from last year.
So speaking of girls, and you mentioned that we'll be in Mount Vernon. Are we covering the girls meet and the boys? Is that how that is going to run?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, there'll be they'll be wrestling side by side, and we'll have matches. We'll have both kind of a side kind of a split screen for both mats. So the duels will be running simultaneously, and we'll be covering both on KCRG 9.2, and then you can read features from both duels at thegazette.com.
That'll be interesting and fun to do, and hopefully fun to watch. So
yeah, yep, really excited for that coming up. Now I know. Are you officiating on Saturday? I know there's a lot. We're
yes.
getting into things here. I'll be going back to Mount Vernon for their Mustang Invitational that they run. So making lots of trips down Highway 30 there to the east.
Right. So up until yesterday morning, I was roughing the up at Western Dubuque, and then yesterday morning they changed me to Mount Vernon, and then this morning they changed me back to Western Dubuque. The fish, I'm going to go right into the officiating, but that's how crazy it is right now, and I feel sorry for the organizers, the officials that are trying to fill all of the gaps. And I saw this morning there's an SOS for 5 officials, the need for 5 officials for tomorrow, for duels that are varsity duels that are tomorrow. And so, I mean, I'm begging again, if anyone's interested, please, dust off your whistle or buy a whistle or call me, I'll give you a whistle. And we just need you. And, even if it's, you get started at the middle school level or the youth level, and, in a lot of ways, that's more difficult than the high school level, because those guys are all over the place. So it's a good learning ground, and just get your feet wet and kind of get going, get some confidence. And some of you that know wrestling can jump right in. So if you have an inkling, please get a hold of me.
I also mentioned this weekend, the World Cup will be competed in Iowa City. I mentioned that just because we have a former Iowa prep that'll be representing Team USA, and Felicity Taylor, who wrestled at South Winneshiek, now part of the Iowa women's wrestling program that'll begin officially competing next season. They're doing some stuff kind of unattached at the moment, not representing Iowa officially yet until next year, but Felicity Taylor will be part of the women's team competing in the World Cup that actually is going to be men and women run simultaneously at the same time, which is the first time that's ever happened with freestyle. So
right, and I'm mad. I'm mad because it's during wrestle season and I'm officiating. And I went to the last World Cup and it was fun. It was so exciting, and I'm mad I don't get to see it this time around. So you don't get to see that every year.
No, and when I got to go out to Vegas for the 2015 World Championships, it opened up my eyes, because it's one thing to see them on TV or to see on a live stream. It's another thing to see them in person. And the athletes that are wrestling internationally at the senior level are fantastic athletes, and they're so fun to watch in person. So if you get a chance, get down there Saturday, Sunday. JR Ogden will be covering some stuff and writing a story from Saturday's competition. I'll head down there Sunday for the final day as well, and I'll be at the Extreme Arena in Coralville. So good luck to Felicity Taylor, and hopefully she has a good showing. Should have a lot of support from friends and fans and family in Eastern Iowa making the trip down there. At least that's what she expects. So that'll be fun to keep an eye on this weekend as well.
Yeah, wish I could be there.
So any last final thoughts or comments about this last week or things coming up?
Nothing comes to mind. Good luck to the competitors, Thursday, tomorrow, and then also Saturday, and that's it, I guess.
So we move on. We're now with another week behind us and a lot of wrestling action ahead of us here this coming up week. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in another week to listen to Coach Briggs and I talk about wrestling at the college and high school levels. And as always, we'll send out with our wrestling plea.
Let's keep wrestling on the move.